Hello, everybody. My name's Patrick McKeever, and I'm a geologist. Now, if you think of geology, you probably think of oil and gas exploration, mining, stuff like that. And you may wonder why I am talking to you this morning about sustainable development. Well, that's because in the mid 1990s, I took a sharp shift of career away from the traditional geologist's career towards developing something called geotourism here in Ireland. Now, at the time, nobody really knew what that was. I didn't really know either. But what I was doing was essentially trying to convert some of our famous geological attractions here into tourism attractions, but doing it in a way that would promote sustainable tourism or green tourism, I suppose, as it's called now. Um, a few years after that, in the year 2000, I met up with some other people who were doing similar work in some other European countries, and together we launched the idea of Geopark. And I thought it was a fairly nebulous concept at the time, to be honest with you. Nobody really knew what a geopark was. But the idea was that it was an area that had special geological heritage, international value, where we were trying to inform the local community about that heritage, the importance of that heritage, and to encourage them to develop it or to promote it in a way that would bring themselves sustainable economic development. Now, this idea took off very, very rapidly and successfully, much to our total astonishment. And 4 years later, I actually found myself in China, extraordinary, um, invited by UNESCO, the United Nations Educational, Science and Cultural Organization, to speak at the first international conference on geoparks. And by that stage, we had 18 geoparks in Europe and 8 in China. And in that year, 2004, we came together to create the concept of a global geopark. Now, there was no official link to UNESCO as such. UNESCO supported the idea, but it wasn't like World Heritage or Man and Biosphere Program. There was nothing official about it. And in 2012, I was invited to join UNESCO actually to head up Earth Science in their headquarters in Paris. And by that stage, our growing number of countries who make up UNESCO, of course, it's the United Nations, so it's ambassadors, etc., became very interested in geoparks, and we're talking to me about how could we formalise this idea within UNESCO itself. So we established a working group, which consisted of myself, some people from different geoparks across the world, and various ambassadors and delegations from different countries. And we met between 2013 and early 2015. I think we met about 7 or 8 times, and by the end of that, we had agreed the concept of a UNESCO Global Geopark. So this is where essentially we were going to convert the existing global geoparks into something brand new, an official UNESCO label, UNESCO Global Geopark. This had never been done before, where UNESCO took an existing concept and brought it inside their own organisation. And indeed, the last time UNESCO made any sort of site designation was back in 1972, when they created the World Heritage. They ratified the World Heritage Convention, which then led to World Heritage sites. So in November 2015, at the General Conference of UNESCO, so this is UNESCO's equivalent to the General Assembly of the United Nations. We had prime ministers, again ambassadors, these sorts of people. They all voted unanimously. In fact, they didn't even vote. It was just by acclamation. There was nobody against it. And so the UNESCO Global Geoparks were brought into existence, and we now have something like 200 of them across the world, including, of course, several in Canada, Timber Ridge in British Columbia. We have the first one was Stonehammer in New Brunswick. We also have Percé in Quebec, and Cliffs of Fundy, Nova Scotia, and Discovery in Newfoundland, and hopefully we will have Niagara UNESCO Global Geopark by the end of this year. Fingers crossed for you. So, do the geoparks really promote sustainable economic development? Well, the statistics suggest they do. I mean, firstly, why do so many areas in the world want this label? That's a fundamental question. Well, it's clear that they do promote economic development. For example, there's a geopark in Portugal called Aruca, and it has actually appeared on the front of Time magazine as one of the must-see places to go to in the world. And there you have the whole community involved. They have opened new restaurants, new accommodation. They organise guided tours. This is the community, of course, doing it. We have similar thing actually in British Columbia, where the First Nations, they have three First Nation groupings there, and they do similar things as well, which is fantastic. In Northern Ireland, where I am at the moment, a study 2 years ago showed that €500 million comes into our economy simply by people visiting geological attractions. So we have two UNESCO Global Geoparks in this area, plus one geological World Heritage Site. And there are top visitor attractions. We have the Burren in County Clare in the west coast of Ireland, which is just phenomenally successful. They have food trails set up by farmers to bring local people, no, sorry, to bring visitors around their farmland to show them how they produce stuff in a sustainable way, how the produce is linked to the rock of the area, and it absolutely is. We have in that same area Ireland's only Michelin-starred pub, and in fact this area's won so many awards I've lost count of them, and so on and so forth. There are examples from all across the world of how we really are implementing sustainable economic development and making lives better for people in local communities across the world. Now, just going back to the creation of the geoparks back in 2015, ironically, just a few months beforehand, the United Nations itself, the parent organisation of UNESCO, the UN, in September ratified what are called the Sustainable Development Goals, the Agenda 2030. And I'm very pleased that indeed Ireland was one of the countries, small group of countries, who were involved in actually creating those things. So that's something to be very proud of. Now, you may know that there are 17 Sustainable Development Goals, 17 SDGs, and each of these SDGs have a series of targets. So I'm very quickly just going to go through the 17 SDGs and show you how the UNESCO Global Geoparks are fulfilling each of them. So Sustainable Development Goal 1 is to end poverty in all its forms everywhere. And if you look at target 1.5, this is to build the resilience of the poor and those in vulnerable situations, etc. Well, vulnerable situations include areas that are prone to seismic activity. And one of our geoparks, Lesbos Island in Greece, runs courses for children to teach them what to do, how they should react in case there is an earthquake. And in fact, I was there in 2017, I think it was, when an earthquake did strike Lesbos, and a school, one of the villages in the island, was completely destroyed. But the kids knew exactly what to do. The week before, they had gone through this training, and they all got out alive. And it's extraordinary to see the wreckage of that school, to think anybody could have got out alive. Sustainable Development Goal 2 is to end hunger, achieve food security, improve nutrition, promote sustainable agriculture. Well, it's interesting to say that target 2.3 there is to double agricultural productivity and incomes of small-scale food producers, especially for indigenous people, family farmers, etc. And one of the things that happened back in 2010 in Iceland, in our geopark Katla, was a volcano there, Eyjafjallajökull. We know it because of the ice cloud and the unpronounceable name. It erupted and buried one of the most productive farms in the south coast of Iceland. And afterwards, it was a family farm, and after the eruption, the local people all came together to clear the land, and the ice, ironically, has made it more productive. So this is again where a small family farm is now promoting sustainable agriculture in a geopark. Sustainable Development Goal 3 is to maintain healthy lifestyles, and really, every geopark is about that, of course, because we have established walking routes. We take people out, get people fit, not just physically, but also, very importantly, mentally as well, by stimulating their mind, getting them to think about how nature is connected, all different types of nature, our geological heritage, our biological heritage, our intangible culture. All of things are related. Every geopark, of course, is involved in these things. Sustainable Development Goal 4 is to ensure inclusive and equitable quality education for all. Well, again, the geoparks do this because every geopark must have education courses across all age groups to inform not just the teachers but also the local people about those aspects of heritage that the local people maybe have never known about the geology. And it's lovely that we have some examples of twinning between different schools and different geoparks. And one of the most interesting things we've done is that school in Hong Kong, the Hong Kong UNESCO Global Geopark, and schools across the Japanese UNESCO Global Geoparks actually are twinned, and they visit each other, they learn about each other's culture. And that's very, very important, because learning about each other's culture and meeting people from different countries builds respect, and that builds peace. And that is actually the mandate of UNESCO, to build peace in the hearts of men and women. Sustainable Development Goal 5 is gender equality and the empowerment of women and girls. Fundamental importance in all geoparks. Geoparks will not function unless there is gender equality and empowerment of women. And we have across the network excellent examples of this. And I should mention that in the Qeshm Island UNESCO Global Geopark of Iran, we have a women's cooperative where women are themselves inviting people into homes, offering staying with families in the area. The women will cook the local dishes, they make crafts, and they're earning money, their own money, through this. We have another example of that in Greece as well. Moving on to the Sustainable Development Goal 6, which is to ensure the availability and sustainable management of water and sanitation. An interesting experiment, well, it wasn't an experiment, I suppose, an interesting job was done in my own geopark, Quilca Mountain, Quilca Lakelands, UNESCO Global Geopark here in Ireland, where the visitor centre changed from basically having a septic tank to one where they built a series of reed beds, which meant that sewage coming out from the visitor centre, by the time it reached the water, it was drinkable. It was absolutely clean. And the result of that was what various types of river life that had gone from the river because of pollution came back. And so that's just an example. There are many. Goal 7 is to ensure access to affordable, reliable, sustainable and modern energy for all. Well, of course, for this I have to go to Iceland, to the two geoparks there, Reykjanes and Katla. And maybe you've seen recently, just the start of December, the spectacular eruption in the Reykjanes UNESCO Global Geopark. This area is famous for geothermal energy. Anybody, if you've ever been, has probably gone to the Blue Lagoon, which is the wastewater outlet from the Svartsengi geothermal power plant in the geopark. And that's just an example of how we promote sustainable energy. Of course, there's all sorts of other ones. There's wind energy, hydro, and plenty more photovoltaic cells. Sustainable Development Goal 8 is to promote sustained, inclusive, and sustainable economic growth. In this one, we, again, as a fundamental concept of the geopark, is to encourage local people to set up their own businesses within the geopark, sustainable businesses. Can be food, can be crafts, can be guided tours, renting of bicycles, and anything really, accommodation centres, and this happens in all geoparks. Going on to Sustainable Development Goal 7, which is to build resilient infrastructure, promote inclusive and sustainable industrialisation, and foster innovation. Fostering innovation is a very interesting one. That's really what geoparks like to do as well. They like to be innovative. They don't want to just follow the trend. They really, I suppose, in many ways want to be trend makers. And through our sister program, the International Geoscience Program, we have a special set of money left aside for young scientists to come together from different countries across the world to work on common projects. So that's another good example. Sustainable Development Goal 10 is to reduce inequality within and among countries, and Target 10.2 is to empower and promote social, economic, and political inclusion of all. Now, that's important. In the management of geoparks, it's the local people who are the managers. It's not people from the capital city or regional government. It has to be the local people. Sure, they can get, and most do get, financial support of some sort from central or regional or indeed local government, but it's the local people themselves that take the decisions that run each geopark. Sustainable Development Goal 11 is to make cities and human settlements inclusive, safe, resilient, and sustainable. And Target 11.4 is to strengthen efforts to protect and safeguard the world's cultural and natural heritage. Well, of course, that's what geoparks are doing. Those key geological sites in each geopark that give them the international value must be protected. So that's exactly the fundamental role of geoparks. Moving on to SDG 12 is to ensure sustainable consumption and production patterns. And here again, within the geoparks, many geoparks have gone back to using traditional methods of agriculture. And we have an example. I mentioned about the food trails here in Ireland. We have a concept called geofood, which was established by an Italian colleague, and it's now active in many of the UNESCO Global Geoparks. And geofood is basically food that is produced sustainably. In terms of its the way it's grown, the production patterns, and how it's consumed. So this again is a fundamental thing in geoparks. SDG 13 is take urgent action to combat climate change. And its impacts, well, I think in Canada last year you witnessed climate change in its most dramatic form, really, I suppose. From forest fires, hurricanes, my goodness, you name it, in Canada kind of suffered it, didn't you? In fact, Tumbler Ridge, the town of Tumbler Ridge in BC, one of our geoparks, was indeed evacuated due to fires there. A nice story from the Mixteca Alta UNESCO Global Geopark in Mexico is that they have reverted to traditional patterns of agriculture as well, because here they were they're increasingly suffering drought because of climate change. So they have gone back to how they would have produced maize maybe 600-700 years ago with different types of irrigation, and means that now they can again have 2 crops of maize every year. So this adaptation is very important, and it's ironic that we're not learning anything, we're just reinventing what our ancestors did several hundred years ago. SDG 14 is to conserve and sustainably use the ocean, the seas, and marine resources. And many of the geoparks, especially our island geoparks, actually conserve large marine areas as well, offshore. And indeed, on Lesbos Island in Greece, they take glass-bottom boats out into the conserved marine area where you can see fossilized trees, a fossilized forest on the seafloor there. Moving on to 15, to protect, restore, and promote sustainable use of terrestrial ecosystems. manage forests, combat desertification, etc. And this is important in several geoparks. And for example, in Dong Van, UNESCO Global Geopark in the very north of Vietnam, this is a karst area with very, very thin soil. And it's important there that the ecosystem, well, the ecosystem there is very, very fragile. So through the geopark, the local people are learning how to really look after this fragile ecosystem, but still maintain their ability to grow food for themselves. Almost done, and up to SDG 16 is to promote peaceful and inclusive societies. Peace is the fundamental reason UNESCO was created. Its strapline is because war is created in the hearts of men and women, then we need to build peace in the hearts of men and women. And geoparks have formed twinning relationships all across the world. We have transnational geoparks between former old enemies. I mean, Germany and Poland, there's a transnational geopark, Slovenia and Austria, Slovakia and Hungary, and Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland, my own geopark. And all the geoparks, we all meet together, and there's just respect for each other. Really, there really is a good model of peace building. But probably the best example is in Sustainable Development Goal 17, which urges the strengthening and means of implementation and revitalise the global partnership for sustainable development. And target 1716 is said that this can be done by multi-stakeholder partnerships. Well, all of the geoparks are linked together through an organisation called the Global Geoparks Network. It is a multi-stakeholder global partnership of friendship, of exchange. Geoparks learn from each other, teach each other, build common projects together. And I think this is really the heart of the spirit of Agenda 2030. Respect for each other and respect for the earth. I hope this has been of value to you. There are many websites that you can check out. Perhaps the best place to start is the UNESCO website itself, unesco.org, and then just search UNESCO Global Geoparks. I wish you all the best of luck in your studies and best of luck for the future. Thank you. Bye-bye.